This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
It is Sunday, December 14th, 2014. We've just finished Sunday meeting, and during meeting there was something relevant to the Hong Kong-China dispute over China pre-authorizing candidates. Students have been protesting, doing much harm to the Hong Kong economy for a number of weeks now, because the next year or year after the elections in Hong Kong, China says they have to pre-authorize candidates. And the protesters are demonizing the Hong Kong Authority and China Authority over this policy. This is what I want to talk to you about. It's relevant to our testimony in the little meeting that we had here today. In the background, I want to talk about the worldly destruction that I've seen and the hate that has been generated towards Russia. That's where I'm speaking to you from, because of their policy to not allow propagandizing gay, lesbian behaviors in public to protect children. In the background, the problem with the breakdown of the home, the growth of daycare, the autism gone from 1 in 2000 when I was born to 1 in 50-some now this year. Especially for boys. Girls, it's just slightly less. But also, along with this exponential increase of autism comes an exponential increase in sadomasochism, in narcissism, in sociopathic behavior, in crime, in murder. It's to the point where it's hard to win an election unless you're giving money to these groups and supporting them. And there needs to be something to care about child rearing in the family, rather than making it free to have free sex and then kill the baby in the womb or take a pill to drop it down the toilet. There's something needs to be done. But let's get into the background of America, Obama, and show the problems there, and then I'll get to Hong Kong, China's desire to vet the political candidates, and how they're almost got it, but they don't quite. There is an answer. It's very simple. The problems of this corruption came up in our Sunday home church meeting. It was my wife, my 5-year-old granddaughter, and an 84-year-old retired neighbor that's a retired engineer. And he has the intellectual capacity to understand, but he doesn't have the informational background. My testimony was part of the informational background, and that's what motivated me to make this video. At the end, I will share these insights, but I'm giving you background of why they're so important. In the background here, please understand, Obama is part of a worldwide network of organizations that are supporting gay, lesbian, transsexual, homosexual marriage rights internationally. Wherever he's gone, he's promoted this agenda. And it's not just him that they discover here in Russia, the so-called NGOs, non-government organizations, these not-for-profit organizations like Human Rights Watch, are just sending gay and lesbian representatives to agitate for homosexual rights and homosexual marriage. Here's one of their gay marriage advocate leaders speaking last week. I would add here that this gentleman's voice sounds very much like some of the gay friends I had while I was working with the Unitarian Universalist Church in Buffalo. And I found many of them good people, but it doesn't mean that it justifies the corruption of the home and the propagation and propaganda of homosexuality for children.
Human Rights Watch says Russia has dramatically increased its repression of dissent. Unveiling a damning report in Moscow, it said there was now full alarm about autocratic rule, with a growing clampdown on the internet and discrimination against gay people.
It's been nearly a decade since I have visited Moscow. And it's with great disappointment that I see the worst crackdown since the Soviet era. The radical reduction of public debate and the airing of dissenting views is the foundation of the authoritarian rule and unaccountable adventurism that lie behind Russia's acute problems today.
What he's talking about is the law against homosexual propaganda to children. This is such a damnable lie. I have Russian residents. I've lived here 6 months a year for the last 14 years. And this is my last Sunday for a while. I'm going to Florida. But last night I wanted to take my 5-year-old granddaughter and my wife out for a pizza. We weren't going to go to the pizza place. We were going to go to a nice restaurant in the park. There's 2 of them, and there's such worldliness and dancing and goofiness. We decided to go to a place here that advertises pizza meals and a full course along with salads and so forth too. So we went there, and there's a full screen. We had eaten there once before. But now there's a full screen television on the one back wall, and also there was one of the imaginary children's programs. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was outer space stuff, and my 5-year-old granddaughter enjoyed it a little bit. My wife was a little bit concerned. I said I recognized English. Some English woman wrote a whole series of books, and they were made into movies. But at any rate, so we're sitting there eating. Next thing we know, there's lewd, almost naked dancing and blood and like a sadomasochism, and it just going on and on and on. And this was Russian television. We had our granddaughter go and sit on the other side so she couldn't see it. I was so shocked. I wished I had the good sense to go and tell them, if they don't turn off the television, we can't stay there anymore. It was so vulgar. It was pornography, and of some of the worst kind, with sadomasochism in it. And Russia has a real problem. They're trying to clamp down on drugs and alcohol and this open celebration of drinking and goofiness. There's all kinds of freedom here, but they're trying to protect children and trying to reestablish the home. It's not what these homosexual advocates are distorting reality into so that they can go and do what they want to do in public and advocate it to children, like they're doing in America and like they're doing in Europe now. Please understand where the problem comes from. It shares part of it with China. Part of the roots come from Marx and Engels. Engels wrote in part of the foundation of communism that marriage was invented by the dominant males, that they could have children to pass on their wealth and power to. Therefore, you didn't need to respect marriage. That was step 1. Women's liberation was a big part of the communist revolution, but that's only a part of it. They lost so many people in the First World War, men killed in military in the First World War, and in the Second World War, the Germans killed millions, and the communists killed millions of their own men for dissent. So here they had men coming home from the war in Russia, in Germany, No other men in the village. There's stories about how the man that came home, his phone was always ringing. The women wanted to have a baby. They didn't have men. So you got a man that fathered a village. But the breakdown of the home is real. It's not because the people wanted it. It's human nature, women's liberation, and all the men that were killed for being honorable. Let's get on with it. And Russia is aware of this. They have they probably have more gays than homosexuals because they've had the liberation that put children in daycare long before Europe and America. But that's besides the point. They have their rights here, but they are trying to protect children, that they are not indoctrinated in this. And I can explain the process involved here that they're trying to protect them from, that when they do emerge, if they have a healthy enough foundation into heterosexual life, that they could have a healthy marriage and home to raise children in. That's a whole nother agenda. But the background is Obama has, since the Winter Olympics, when they wouldn't allow the homosexuals to make their gay pride parades, and outlawed them, that's when Obama and the people that are part of this gay, lesbian, worldwide international network decided to go against Russia and demonize it. And they're murdering children in Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. That's part of Ukraine. Ukraine was Russia before they moved from, the capital of Russia was Kiev, and they moved it to Moscow for safety. Wake up. Let's get on with it.
His teacher blamed the Ukrainian government. Ukraine isn't killing dogs, it's killing people, she cried. Why is everybody silent? Why do our children have to die, leaving us to pray?
But that's background. Look what just went on in the last couple of weeks in America. Now remember, in Ferguson, Illinois, Michael Brown had just robbed a store as a thug, pushing the owner around, and then was walking down the middle of the street arrogantly and resisting arrest when he was shot. Then the policeman was not found worthy to stand trial for killing this young robber and arrest resistor, and this is what his parents did.
And again, I want to reiterate that is the stepfather of Michael Brown Jr.
So the crowd went on to burn down many buildings, and there was no arrests for inciting riot. What it's a matter? Then black youths went on to 1 o'clock in the morning to hammer on a car with hammers, and the owner got out and they murdered and beat him to death with hammers in front of his wife. There were young black teens expressing their hatred for whites. And the man wasn't even American. He was from Bosnia. And what hurts me here is I have 2 black grandsons. I paid $5,000 to help bring them from Haiti. And the one went on to serve a couple of times in Iraq in the Army, a helicopter mechanic. And I haven't had racist friends. I wasn't brought up in a racist world. My forefathers fought and died to free slaves. What type of an insanity is this that they're perpetuating? Forgive me, I'll get back to Hong Kong and China and the powerful message for that. But here's a clip by a man who's giving an overview of what's going on in America and doesn't need a script. He's just speaking the truth.
I wonder if y'all gonna get tired of all this race wars going on one day. It's far too many. And you know why we're doing it? Because there are so-called leaders in the community who refuse to stand up for the right thing. I'm your host, the Doctor of Common Sense, E.T. Williams. Please visit the website at www.whateverhappenedtocommonsense.com. See, this thing is spilling over, and we're going to have ourselves a full-fledged race war pretty soon. And we can blame it all on those so-called leaders who has been instigating these riots. If any of you have any God in you whatsoever, wake the hell up, idiots. Now we have a 32-year-old white Bosnian man who was bludgeoned to death with a freaking hammer by 4 little black teenage thugs. They've caught 2 of them already. They say they have a name of another one. They believe it may be even a 4th suspect. Now, I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, what in the hell are they doing with hammers at 1 o'clock in the morning? Matter of fact, what are they doing outside at 1 o'clock in the morning? Wait a minute. I'm sure they were on their way to build a building at 1 a.m. in the morning. No, I know what it is. There were some hammers sticking up in the street, and they had the hammers just to hammer the nails down so that no cars would run over them. Just imagine if this Bosnian man, who, depends on what story you listen to, his wife said that in the video, his wife says that she was there. He was trying to protect her. They said it was another man in his car. He took off running for cover because he didn't know what they was going to try to do. They said they started beating on the car with the hammers at first. He got out to ask them, what the hell are you doing beating on my car? And for that, he got bludgeoned to death with hammers. Now, people want to say they don't know what the motive behind this was. Are you freaking kidding me or what? They was acting the fool in Ferguson. They needed some white people to attack. You mean to tell me you don't think this has nothing to do with it? This is a random act? Who in the hell goes and starts beating on somebody's car with a hammer at 1 a.m. in the morning? They're carpenters now, just carrying around a hammer? Who carries around a damn hammer? These freaking little idiot, these little thugs got in their mind because the leaders has told them. Do you want to recant what the leaders said? Barack Obama, the president of the United States, told Al Sharpton on the 5th. You remember after they lost the election, he said, come on down, Al. You make sure those protesters down there stay the course. Now, some of you too stupid to look at the truth. You don't even want the facts. Because if you look at the facts, there should be no rioting going on in Ferguson at all. Just like if this man had got out and shot the little SOBs, there will be a riot going on over in this town also. Because when you start justifying people breaking the law, when you start justifying people acting like complete idiots, this is what you get. The leaders have literally told them. Barack Obama also sent Eric Holder down there. He was more concerned about protesting the rowdy, law-breaking protesters than he was about protecting the businesses. I heard that they had the National Guard, but that Daffy Duck, that insane cartoon character that they have as a governor, must have listened to Barack Obama. You know, Mr. I thought I saw a putty cat. I did, you putty cat. Jay Nixon needs to be locked up. He's no freaking leader. I don't care if Barack Obama told you not to do it. I done told Barack Obama, I'm putting the National Guard out here protecting my citizens. You don't like it, sissy. You go back in the White House and go and get involved in some of what you do. It is insulting. He's not the only one. We have Al Sharpton out there with a bullhorn, literally screaming to the top of his voice like, we're going to get some justice. What does that mean? You have the father, the stepfather of Mike Brown saying, burn this bitch down. What else could you possibly mean by that? That's not inciting a riot. You can't go into a crowded building and scream fire. But he says, burn this bitch down. And the mama says he didn't instigate the crowd. They were all riled up. She says she blamed the governor. You blame the governor? I blame the governor too, but not the same reason you blame the governor. How about some responsibility for your son going in there, robbing a store, carrying out like a complete idiot? Stop telling me how he was a gentle giant. Not only did he bully the guy in the store, when the guy approached him in the store, he stopped and said, "What you want to do?" What man robs the store, come back in and says, "I dare you, tell me not to rob your effing store." Leaves out of the store after robbing the store, was asked to get out of the middle of the street. He didn't get out of the middle of the street. This is why this has something to do with this. These same little hooligans was going down the same course as Mike Brown was going down. You can't tell me this don't have anything to do with Ferguson. 4 black teenagers, or 3. How many of it was there? Some say it was up to 4. Carrying hammers at 1 a.m. in the morning. Now, I know some of you going to say they was attending carpenter school. They were like little Jesus trying to be carpenters. They was in the community just building up old people's homes at 1 a.m. in the morning. I'm sure that's what you're going to tell me, right? Any fool who believes that this don't have anything to do with Ferguson, they're fooling themselves. This Bosnian community said they've had another young man in 19 years killed in their community. See, this is what Barack Obama and the Al Sharptons and the Louis Farrakhan's has wanted. Race riots. And if you're stupid enough to let them pit you against each other just because based on race, you're stupid, then I thought you, and stop hiding behind God. Anybody who's trying to justify what Mike Brown did, anybody who's trying to justify by looking at the evidence that he was in the right, I'm going to question how much God you really got in you. Said it was a tragedy he got killed. He brought it on himself. Who asked him to go rob the store? Who asked him to stay in the middle of the street when the officers asked him to move to the curb? Who asked him to attack the police officer? Do you really think if Mike Brown had never attacked the police officer, we would be even talking about Mike Brown? Nobody would know who Mike Brown was. I had never heard of Mike Brown until he decided to act like a gangster and go in here robbing stores and attacking police officers. These little hooligans, give them a death penalty. I don't give a damn if they're 15 and 16. Put them on death row. Put him in there on death row. The little SOBs decided to bludgeon this man. His wife said she was there. He tried to protect her. One other man said he ran. I don't know. But the story is that he was bludgeoned to death because he didn't want people beating on his car with a hammer. Kind of like the other guy in Ferguson who lost his store because he tried to stop Mike Brown from robbing his store for cigarettes or cigars, whatever you want to call them. And for stopping them, he get his whole store burnt down. How is that justice? Tell me how you got right on your side. Don't even try to quote God to me if you're justifying Mike Brown, because I don't want to hear from you. You're fake. You're phony. You're a fraud. Stop trying to hide behind religion. Get all religious and stuff. Well, you know the Lord don't like murder. Are you going to pay attention to what you do? There are consequences behind attacking somebody. If somebody 300 pounds started attacking you and you got a gun, what you going to do? Bake him some cookies? I wish to God that this Bosnian fella had him a gun when they started beating his car, and he'd have got out of there and just kept every last one of those. But I don't care if they ran, shoot their asses. Pisses me off that they did this to this man, killed him. I think he's a father too. I know he was married. Beat him for minding his own business. Oh, forgot it. Minding his own business and being white. That's his crime. And you got all your leaders who supposed to be with this worthy clause, the NAACP. Change your damn name. That organization is so irrelevant that it sickens me when I hear them talking about they got a just cause. Stop living off Martin Luther King's dreams. You're trampling over his dreams. You should judge the person by the content of their character. I fought. But that's not interesting. You know why? Because you're demons, just like these little demon hooligans decided to bludgeon this man to death because he was white and they had to get their pound of flesh. They're like vampires come out at night looking for a pound of flesh. What possibly could come out positive about a bunch of teenagers with hammers in the middle of the night? Ask yourself that question. What in the hell are they doing with hammers at 1 a.m. in the morning in the middle of the street beating on people's cars? I'm sure the white guy may have looked at them wrong, so they had a good excuse. We are in trouble in America. Whether you know it or not, you better start using what God gave you up here. Get your emotions out of it. Think about it from a point that if I look at the facts, you're not looking at the facts. You should be ashamed of yourself. These little thugs need to be prosecuted and put on death row. That's how I see it.
Now I'm going to go to what happened in our meeting that gave the foundation to understand that China has made one step in the right direction, but it's not enough. And the testimony from meeting will lead us into the insights that I'm talking about. My wife gave her testimony from 1 Peter chapter 2. Basically it says, wherefore, laying aside all prejudice and all guile and all hypocrisy, envies, and all evil speaking, like newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto living stones, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Goes on, we need to be living stones, rejected by men, but from truth, from the spirit of truth, from our source of existence caring. That after her testimony, I was looking, and I see, while I'm looking at her testimony, I see there chapter 3 says, likewise ye wives be subject to your own husbands, that if, and goes on, and then in verse 7, likewise ye husbands dwell with according to knowledge. And wives submit to your husbands and so forth. And then we went to the next step where it says about meeting, because Alexander, the elderly gentleman, 84-year-old gentleman, we had an hour discussion before meeting, and I said to allow this, there's something substantial going on. And it reminded me of a part of Scripture where it says, if someone's speaking and someone else is moved, let the one speaking pause to let the other talk. I'll look for that just now and quote it to you. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 30. If anything be revealed to another sitting by, let the first hold his peace. For ye may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn, and all may be comforted. The spirit of the prophets, that's the speaking teacher or whatever, the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace in all the churches of the saints. That's all the homes where you get together. But the point here is, if we're talking, many parts of our brain are on the same subject matter. This I learned when I was teaching math disabilities, how to help students correct. But it's a simple fact. And a person sitting on the sidelines with an inspirational thought, relevant, it has a small area, part of the brain involved in that. And if they don't get an opportunity to focus on it, by the time their attention goes from something else, they've lost it. Where the person who's speaking can come back to their topic. So it's for the person to speak. Let those that have an inspiration speak, and then come back to your testimony. Right below that is a very important thing that I want to bring to your attention on about women, that opened up this whole subject that will show why Hong Kong is wrong and China is on the right track but not right yet. Now this is what opens up a can of worms that, in taking care and clearing up the worms, shows insight into what's going on in China. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 14. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in the church, in the meeting, the fellowship. All right. Now comes the interesting part. Here we are with an 84-year-old engineer that loves the Lord and has raised a healthy family, and his wife is gone. That he met Olga while Olga's working in the garden, and he sees her nice nature and a granddaughter and enjoys such, and was invited to the meeting and enjoys the fellowship. And here he is sitting in our meeting reading this about women keep silence in the meeting, and I let my wife and 5-year-old daughter have prayer and testimony the same as Alexander and myself. So, how do you reconcile this? Well, first of all, I gave Alexander the background of truth of how God made us, how we evolved by God's laws of physical reality. And that fundamental is that which has babies makes the genetic future. And the funny thing about women, like here in Russia, some years more than half the babies are killed before they're born. And the same worldwide, it's an epidemic. Now, I don't want unwanted children, but it can be prevented without killing babies. At any rate, so here is this situation of women killing babies. It's historic. Abraham was the one who took a stand against killing children. We don't see that, but he was the role model, and it was part of Israel after, part of the Jews after that, not to kill babies, and it was part of the reason that they exterminated some cultures that were murdering them and murdered their babies. Was enough for Joshua to say, wipe them out, don't take any of their stuff or nothing, just make it a safe place for babies. And now we have this where it's not safe for a baby, but an unhealthy one will give all kinds of money, get money, and when really it's the HMOs and social welfare people making money off from it that are organizing, and the fundraisers are the biggest profit makers. But that's a whole nother story. Back to this testimony to try and help Alexander understand why I allow the granddaughter and wife to get testimony and where the background comes from to understand this. Great apes, we've only got about 5% more DNA than great apes, but they do not, mothering great apes do not commit infanticide, and they breastfeed off until the second molars, which is equivalent to 5 years old or so. Why? But yet, if you look at mammals, and I said this, what's the rule? Going of God's laws, the laws of reality, physical reality. God is everything. Matter, space, and motion were made out of his dirt. What's one of the fundamental laws? That which survives is what propagates. And it was the dominant male, whether you're watching pigs or chickens or dogs or cats, the alpha male is beating up the other boys and getting to rape the female. All right, and the female likes to get attention, is the one that tends to get pregnant. So you wonder why they like to go like that and dress half naked in public. It's normal, because that's what got raped and had babies. It's genetic. Not that we don't learn behavior and enjoy our genetics, good or bad, but that's the foundation. That why would great apes not kill their babies? Where historically women have thrown them off the cliff or let them out for animals to eat in the jungle, or thrown them in the river, or thrown them in a fire to Moloch, worshiping a god, making a god. It said that Abraham's father made idols, and many of the idols were used to sacrifice children to, but that's a whole other story. So why? What's the difference between apes and humans? Only 5% or so more DNA. Simple thing. Verbal logical speech. About 10 million years ago, this started to evolve as humans went out of the trees onto the savanna to hunt the herds that had grown up after a grassland was formed. They learned to walk and talk. And with that talking, logical communication, women evolved to understand that baby came from the rape. The hatred for the male dominance and rape and violence over millions of years has been projected onto the infant. Not that the other part isn't there. I explained to Alexander the little baby stage of life is still in him. And I've seen it come out a couple of times. He can be so sensitive and appreciative of his mother when we talk about that he shows signs of having had a very good mother that breastfed him and loved him. But that's a whole nother story. Explaining to him, we're not a single entity, we're a group. All the life stages of different parts of the brain. And there is a part that very much like the female dog that's been raised with a loving mother, just loves its children, and it will even take kitties to mother them. So all these parts are there. The hate, and female cats hate male cats. Male cats hate male cats for the alpha male domination stuff. That's where the anarchists come from. Most males hate male domination. They've been genetically hate. They've been abused just like the females. That's why you can get homosexuals and females and anarchists will work together against the power structure. Well, that's part of the foundation of understanding why in a free society, democracy will destroy it. Because it will gravitate to these. The women not wanting to care for their children means they're raised without that mammalian nursing bond and able to grow to the higher levels of caring, which happen later in life. That's another, we'll get into that maybe. But, okay. So explain to Alexander that something like 10 million years ago, logical speech gave women the ability to understand that the child was a product of the rape. And the genetic resentment for males, which is mammalian, was passed on. And it's wonderful to see doves, which mate for life and care about one another. There's no genetic resentment there. So it can be bred out. We can make lap dogs out of wolves in a few generations of selective breeding. But Nazi Germany gave such a bad reputation to that. They're afraid to fix genetically damaged people, so they're not making babies. And they want you to donate money to care for the suffering products of this ignorance. All right, so that's the foundation. And I will now go to the stages of development for a healthy child. In my Needs of Children seminar, was produced at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Buffalo. By the way, you could see a video, one of my videos on that. but I learned much. One of the speakers was Dr. Bruno Schattkecker. He had been head of the psychiatric hospital at Buffalo. He was a psychiatrist at the Buffalo VA and hated by many because he ordered a lobotomy on a man. But still, he ended up in this liberal congregation, and I invited him as a speaker at this Needs of Children seminar. And he spoke of his foundation at NYU back in the first part of the 1900s. Bruno's long dead. This was in the 1970s, and he was in his 80s at that time. So, but he gave the foundation that I've built on. They had recognized the first 4 stages of human development. That a healthy child is narcissistic. A baby that's well cared for and loved thinks the world is just an extension of them. And all they can do is take perfectly good food and turn it into poop. And if you're a healthy parent, you love them and change their diaper. But the next level of development is like me. And first of all, it's everybody is like me. It's all part of me, serving me. Narcissism. The second part is homoeroticism. Those like me. And as a child develops, healthy boys like boys. Healthy girls like girls. And if you give them the freedom, and they've got this healthy foundation. Now, don't confuse this with children raised without breastfeeding and bottle-fed and put in daycare. They don't develop in the normal pattern. And there's a lot of sadomasochism if they get beyond the point where they're banging their head on the wall because of the deprivation of sensory stimulation and care and rocking and so forth. But if they get beyond that, they're aggressive. The females are aggressive. The males are aggressive. There are some that are passive as a way of dealing with the problem of deprivation. What are you going to do? That happens and they usually die. But given a normal, healthy foundation of a mother and father, a mother in the home and a father, and the children not shoved into daycare, but go to school maybe at 6 or 7 years old. In Germany, the children were doing superior. Obama, in his second inauguration, said we got to do earlier daycare to help our children are graduating a year below what they graduate in Germany. And what he didn't say was the children were not going to school until 7 years old, and the mother had to stay in the home until Merkel got that changed because there were so many single mothers and they let them have daycare. But the health of the German culture to produce good quality goods and quality control was based on the home and the mother in the home and the children in the home cared for by the mother until 7 years old. They've wiped that away, and you'll see the status of German productivity go the same way as the rest of the world. But that's another point. So here, there's the narcissism, natural first stage of development. Then homoeroticism. And then if they have a healthy foundation and don't get involved in homosexual activity, around 12 to 15, they start to be interested in the other sex. And that's self-gratification too. It's interesting to them, and they're out behind the barn playing. And they've seen in the country, they've seen the cows do it, so they're monkeying around. You got to be careful that the girls don't get pregnant. That's why their chaperone is often a good idea. But teaching the children well with a mother and a father and a mother in the home helps a lot. But what happens next? in a healthy mating process, a young man and a young woman come together and they enjoy that heterosexual relationship. It's gratifying. It's a joy. And if they have a strong enough foundation, pregnancy happens, and here's this little baby. As I said, all you can do is take perfectly good food and turn it into a diaper change. And if they have a healthy foundation, they love it, would die for it. It's the first level of altruistic love. The baby gives them nothing but a dirty diaper, and they do everything they can to care for it. And it causes private home buyers to care about their community, that their children are going to go out in the street. And if there's fathers, it's such a poor culture here in Russia. Very few fathers go out to deal with the garbage that goes on with the teenagers out on the street, and the loud music in the middle of the night, and the firecrackers, and all this stuff. It's hard to find good fathers here. We have one of the priestesses, I call them, they've become so dominant, women who go and carry the gospel 2 by 2. And that's a whole nother subject. They won't allow married couples to go, and they send women. It's against the Bible, but they do it anyway. And now I will clear that up too. But one of the what we call sister workers from Kazakhstan is here and staying in our home, and she says she has a hard time preaching Father God in Russia because men are so disrespected. I was affronted. Just like I was affronted when I left a hole at the children's library. I left a class of students learning English from reading the English-Russian Bible, where you could read the English on one side and the Russian on the other. I'd have them read the Russian so they knew what the words meant, and then read the English so they'd know what they're talking about, and teach them how to pronounce the words. And the library gave me permission for that. And I go to, every 3 months, I go to America. So I left the class for the sister workers. I come back, they had canceled the class. They said they were too busy to spend that time with children. I don't understand that either. Doesn't seem very godly to me. But all this background is relevant to what has happened in China and what's going on. Their one-child policy is creating so much narcissism and sociopathic behavior. There you've got a real problem they're building for their future. They've got to do something about it. But here we've got essentially narcissistic people being attracted to positions of power. Homosexual people being attracted to positions of power and wanting complete liberty and freedom to be who they are and bring it to other people, to advocate it. Where does this come from? They aren't heterosexual. They aren't involved in building a family and building community values. They're involved in forwarding their values, and that's fine. But it doesn't build a healthy tomorrow with healthy homes and healthy children, so they're not going and robbing cigars from poor little store owner and beating him up because he complains. So what's the next level of love for those who have a healthy mammalian foundation is to care about their children. Then they go to school. They care about the schools. They care about the community. And then their children go on to the world of work and university, and they care about that. And the world of war, and they care about that. Because they care about their children, and they grow to care about all children. They're all children of God. That's why I can't degrade Obama for everything, or Jimmy Carter for everything. They're all God's children. I was to South America and saw the way picking fruit for hardly enough to live on, and we're buying it in America, and people making profit, but the workers not getting part of it. That's a whole nother thing, which part of it is what came from Islamic Spain and the domination, and when they finally freed themselves and they sent their sons to colonize South America, they were the dominant ones and did that to the natives. But that's a whole nother subject. I want to get on with this so you don't get distracted and can complete this idea of how to get good leaders. How do we save the family and the home in the future and make that beautiful spaceship? Excuse me. That was my wife. I was late for our walk. She was waiting for me outside. Now we've gone for the walk and I'm back to finish up. But the simple thing is the vetting candidates for positions of authority over others, judges, legislators, executive officers, who hold these positions of authority over others to make a healthy society. And one simple thing, I mean, the growth of narcissism and sociopathic behavior is very hard to get a good person elected anywhere, one who is unselfish and able to love beyond the heterosexual level, but has a knowledge of how to maintain a healthy home and marriage and care for children, is a very simple thing. What Jesus said in the Bible actually is the answer. By their fruits you shall know them. That's why I'm so frustrated with this home church community that I'm part of. They stopped letting married couples go, and they're sending women out 2 by 2, and it attracts narcissistic behavior. And they've covered where it says expose the bad behavior and confront it. It's been covered up, whether it's homosexuality, child, whatever. And that's unfortunate because there's many wonderful people. I don't know how it's going to go. Our home church people have had a convention in Kazakhstan that my wife has gone to. And even though the alpha male priest dominance with female subordinates as couples going out and married couples not allowed anymore, it's obscene to me. I mean, I don't know how to deal with these things. I give a testimony on how important breastfeeding is, and I'm called off to the side on the way to meeting. I haven't driven since 2011, and one of the workers picked me up there and asked me or told me there's a problem with my testimony. I said, well, yeah, what's the problem? What did I talk about that's inappropriate? He says, you talked about breastfeeding. And I felt so bad because there's this little child born into the meeting that needed care. And I just, the knowledge of how important breastfeeding is for healthy development, that they're able to grow in levels of love, that they could have something of that spirit of love that Christ represented to us. And so I didn't even go to a meeting for a whole summer. That was 2 years ago. And then I go back to the meeting. I'm only there 3 months of the year. I go back to the meeting this past summer, and the boy is suffering from something like autism. And I just feel so bad that this women's liberation stuff is so strong. It's where I learned that women were the foundation for the worldly Christian church. They needed to use the priests and pastors against their husbands. That was the manipulation when they didn't have the power of law to just throw him out, take his money, and corrupt his children. But those are difficult issues. I lost 3 children, my income. They were 7, 8, and 9. And I couldn't help them. I worked to keep their mother in the home, but that's when, before women's liberation, had made what they called affirmative action. I was working at Carborundum Research and as a technician, and you could support a family on a technician salary. I bought a home in Kenmore with a little help from my stepfather. But then they came out with this affirmative action. They had to have so many blacks and so many women, and they had to hire them in order to have the government contracts. Carborundum was making ceramic armor for the Vietnam War and so forth. And so they hired them, even though they weren't competent and weren't productive. So they had to lower the salary of the productive people, and they had to make it so. And now all this automation, and women can't stay home. They can't afford to keep a home on one salary anymore. When it used to be, you could. It's insane. But how to build a healthy leadership? One simple thing, what Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. This vetting process has to be there, and the vetting has to include where it says in the Bible about let the women keep silence. I allow my wife and granddaughter to speak in meeting. And that problem with men and women, the logic that men have for the battle, for the hunt, for the defense, that's for millions of years, and it's built. They have millions of more brain cells and right and left hemisphere specialization. That's why if a man has a stroke on one side of his brain, he's had it, because if it's where it has the speech or talking center, it's dead. Women have the capacity in both sides of the brain. It's more like a duplication, like the apes. And they can carry on even after a stroke. Sure, there's some disability, but not the way it can affect a man. But historically, millions of years, the woman's role was to take care of the day, to make sure the children were cared for and fed. That's what survived. They didn't need to plan for the next year or the hunt or the attack of village. And the attacking and being attacked was what survived by God's laws, because inbreeding led to genetic disability. So those who went and got strange women were the ones who tended to have babies. That behavior. The Eskimos even had a policy in many areas, since there were so few of them. If a stranger came through, he was invited to sleep with the wife or daughter, having nothing to do with lust, having to do with they needed the new genetics because there was so much disability, just like with the royalty in Europe and some areas in the Alps. But you can read about those things. So this way that we evolved by God's laws, by the laws of natural selection, there's some things that need dealt with. There are issues with a man and issues with a woman. What you have is on one side the alpha male type Islamofascism domination, and on the other side you have the female manipulative homosexual, and that grouping of people, along with the what do you call them, anarchists, which are largely the males who don't want male domination. The resentment built up genetically there. You've got on both sides. You got women's liberation, destruction of the home and care for the child on one side with daycare, and on the other side you have the Islamofascism with women being jailed. The truth is in the middle. That's where Christ was. That's where much of the Scandinavian culture was before it got destroyed by the 30 Years' War. The Vikings were some of the fiercest fighters, but most noble. They were respected. The Muslims couldn't defeat the Viking settlements in Spain. The Vikings were Norse with a non-Christian culture, but were invited into the Byzantine church as defenders, hired as protectors against Muslims as they became affluent and corrupt. That process over and over, the affluence, and they get women get daycare, babysitters, and wet nurses. They don't want to care for their children, and a corrupt culture there. But the same thing happened. The Vikings had invaded Russia and dominated Russia while it was still in Kiev. And after about a generation, the Vikings, still with their communication back and forth, withdrew and went back to Scandinavia. And the Russian lords invited them back to rule over them because they were so honorable, and the Russian lords were having so much trouble with infighting. So, and that's the middle ground. The Scandinavian Viking culture came out of the million years of mammoth hunting. Maybe not that much, of tens of thousands at any rate. There's even evidence that they were, hunted to death in North America. And all the mammoth bone homes, and you can look things up for yourself. But they had to learn to work together as a male team because they were going out and getting a couple tons of meat that they had to travel towards the end over 1,000 miles on the river. And they had to have big boats. That's where the ocean sailing come with the megaliths. But they learned to work together, and they developed a culture of wives that respected their husbands. They could go away and come back, and their wife was there maintaining the home and not out playing hanky-panky. Part of that culture was where some of the women used to throw themselves on the funeral pyre when their husband died. They didn't want to live without him. That's an aside. But we've got the problem with female genetics and the anarchist male genetics against the dominant alpha male, and we got the alpha male genetics to dominate. How do we get around all this and the breakdown of the home? Simple reason. We need good leaders, and we're not getting them. They should be vetted, like in China, but it should be a man and a wife. The man is the spokesman, but they need to work together, and they need that simple thing Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. They need to be a man and a woman who have raised a family, and that their children have children, their grandparents to be president, to be high leaders, grandparents, and by their children and their grandchildren, the quality of their life has to be there for them to be eligible to run for the election. That's it, folks. How to get some leaders that understand intuitively something about men and women working together and making a healthy home and caring for the children. And the most important thing there is the mammalian nursing bond. That's it, folks. By their fruits you shall know them. We need to respect marriage and raise married couples to the highest levels of authority, and that includes the home church. The overseers should be a husband and a wife who have shown by the family they've grown up, and then rather than just being invited to go to China or somewhere and have a home to entertain workers as they come through, rather than being missionaries themselves. It's a crime what has been done to Christ's family. We need to have a married couple as overseers for any area, for the home church and for the workers that are going out, and coordinating that and they need to stay in the homes. And they need to have couples that will go and make a home to stay there. Look at that couple that stopped cannibalism in Papua New Guinea. It was a married man and woman, and went there and preached Jesus and brought an end to cannibalism. A man and a wife, just like Peter and his wife went to the land of the 7 churches and preached. And like Paul says, don't we have the right to carry about a wife or a sister? They didn't go alone. Wake up and realize that you need both the man and the woman working together. Yes, the man is the spokesman. And because of the logical ability with the larger brain, then they need to be respected. That doesn't hate the sin but love the sinner. Doesn't mean he's always right. But make a logical argument to a man, and you'll get further than you can brain-wise than you can with a woman who has her intuitive desire for what she needs for the day. All right, folks. By their fruits you shall know them. I'm sorry that there aren't many fruits in my life, but my wife and I, this is my 3rd wife. I didn't bear very good fruit by the 1st wife. After 15 years of divorce, my 1st wife died from a blood clot to the artery to her lungs. I got my 3 children back and the home back, half of it anyway. That's when I decided to profess. They were 21, 22, and 23. I joined the home church to try and be a better example for my adult children that I've been deprived of for so many years. Then, year after I professed, I met a woman at the same convention where my mother and father had met. And we ended up being married at the end of the year. But she left when there were problems with literature that I considered pornographic, not removed from the home. So I turned down meeting in my home, and that was enough of an affront to her that she left me and divorced me. And then after 10 years of being single, I was so hurt by my adult children that it opened up my heart to have a helpmate. And I had taught for summer, I taught spoken English with a charity organization in Lithuania and in 97, and Belarus in 99, where they brought children from 3 different of the post-communist countries together in an English language summer camp. And when I went home, things were so shocking to me with what's happening with my children's families that I was opened up. And that's how I ended up meeting Olga online. I had gone online, Yahoo, looking for a Christian mate. And I found out the American Christian women that said they were Christian were all looked to God for something. God give me this, God give me that. And I met, and on this same network, I met Olga. She seemed sincere, and we'd done our best to make the most of it. Now we have this sweetheart to try and use our experience and our love for the Lord and our understanding of the need of a child for care and discipline. We understand you cannot discipline a child without a caring relationship. But so we're doing our best. And now, with the gift of custody of a granddaughter, 5-year-old, and we've had her with us ever since she was 2 years old. And her mother did a good job of breastfeeding for the first 2 years and weekends for the next 2 years after that. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for your time and attention. I wanted to give my granddaughter an opportunity to say hello and tell me what you think about people.
Good people.
You got good people? What do you think about taking part in meeting? Testimony.
I like take testimony.
Yeah, how do you get ready for testimony?
From teaching God.
Yeah, how do you get that? What do you do every night before you go to bed?
Listen some Bible.
Oh, you got Bible on what?
In telephone.
On a cell phone. And you listen to the Bible before what?
Sleep.
Before sleep. Okay. I appreciate you bring a nice spirit to meeting, and I want to thank you for that. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
This is from the website thewaythetruithandthelife.net.